rewritten horror version. Last year, I enrolled in a grim, underfunded medical school on the outskirts of Los Angeles, a sprawling, decaying city that seemed to swallow light itself. I'd never lived anywhere bigger than a small rural town where the nights were quiet and the stars still shone. Here, the air buzzed with over 4 million restless souls, their voices drowned out by the constant hum of traffic and distant sirens. Since I was a kid, I'd known I had a half-brother, Silas, somewhere in this urban abyss. My parents spat his name like a curse, their faces twisting with a rage I never understood, so I learned not to ask. I tracked him down on X years ago. His profile was sparse, just a grainy photo of a gaunt man with hollow eyes, but it was enough to burn his face into my memory. I'd been in LA for barely a month when, out of the blue, a message popped up on my phone. It was from Silas, or at least his X account. The profile looked real, a few cryptic posts about abandoned buildings, a handful of followers, and that same sunken-eyed photo staring back at me. "Hey, it's me," the message read. "Been too long. Meet me tonight, old warehouse off Skid Row. Bring in some friends. We'll catch up." My stomach churned with a mix of thrill and dread. I dreamed of this moment, but something about it felt off. I was still a stranger to LA, clueless about its shadowed corners, and Skid Row's name alone conjured images of flickering streetlights and desperate faces. Still, the idea of finally meeting him gnawed at me, outweighing the unease. I imagined every scenario, us laughing like long-lost siblings, or me stammering awkwardly while he glared, unimpressed. Worse, what if we argued, some buried family resentment spilling out, and I ended up sobbing in front of his friends, mascara streaking down my face? If he'd suggested a quiet diner or even a seedy bar, I might have gone without hesitation. But a warehouse with strangers. It felt wrong, exposed, like a scene set for something I couldn't predict. I couldn't shake the image of myself breaking down in front of faceless onlookers, so I stayed home, pacing my cramped apartment, the message glowing unanswered on my screen. Weeks later, curiosity got the better of me. I searched online for the warehouse district near Skid Row, just to see what I'd dodged. What I found made my blood run cold. The area wasn't just rough, it was a no-man's land, a maze of crumbling buildings tagged with gang symbols, where violent crime wasn't a risk, but a guarantee. Locals whispered about a crew that ruled those streets, extorting anyone who dared linger after dark. Even the junkies paid a toll to squat there undisturbed. And that warehouse? Articles mentioned disappearances, people lured in, never seen again. My excitement curdled into fear. Had Silas really invited me there? Was he in trouble or something worse? I had to know. He was supposedly a dropout from a nearby community college, so I called up a classmate, Mara, who went there. She agreed to track him down on campus and arrange a meeting. A few days later, she texted me. "Found him. He's weird, but he'll meet us at my place." That night, the three of us sat in Mara's dimly lit living room, the air thick with tension. Silas wasn't what I'd expected, tall and wiry, with a jittery energy and eyes that darted like he was tracking something unseen. But we clicked, strangely. We ate takeout, watched some old horror flick, and even laughed a little, though my chest ached with unspoken questions. Mara played buffer, keeping things light. Then I brought up the warehouse message. Silas froze, his fork clattering against his plate. "I haven't touched X in years," he said, voice low. "Deleted my account after high school." My skin prickled. I pulled up the message to show him, but when I opened the app, the account was gone. Vanished, like it had never existed. "Someone's messing with you," he muttered, glancing at the window as if expecting to see a face pressed against the glass. "Or with us." That night, I crashed on Mara's couch, too rattled to go home alone. As I drifted off, I heard it, a faint tapping, like fingernails on glass, coming from the window. I didn't look. I couldn't. But in the morning, Mara found something outside, a single muddy footprint, too large to be human, pressed into the dirt beneath the sill. And scratched into the frame, faint but unmistakable, were the words, "See you soon." In 1996, I was 15, living in a fading town of 100,000, where the streets were lined with sagging houses and the air always smelled faintly of rust. I'd just started high school in the city's rougher core, a place where the buses ran late and the shadows stretched too long. My family had always whispered about my half-sister, Lila, who'd vanished into Los Angeles years ago. Mom and Dad spat her name like it burned, so I'd pieced her together from scraps, an old Polaroid, a locked diary I'd pried open once. Last month, out of nowhere, a letter arrived, scrawled in spidery ink. "It's Lila. I'm back. Meet me at the old mill lot off Route 9 tonight. Bringing friends. We'll talk." The handwriting matched the diaries, and my heart raced. I'd finally see her. I should have known better. Route 9 was a dead stretch of town, where the mill's rusted skeleton loomed over a junk-strewn lot. Everyone said it was cursed. Kids went missing there in the 80s, and the cops stopped bothering to patrol. But I was too desperate to care. That day after school, I skipped the usual bus stop and trudged to the main station, a crumbling depot where the lights flickered and the wind carried a low, moaning hum. I waited at Gate 3 for Bus 15, the one that'd get me closest to Route 9. Another line, Bus 17, shared the gate, heading nowhere near it. A man approached me after 10 minutes, his boots crunching on broken glass. He was tall, maybe 40, with a face like weathered leather and eyes that didn't blink enough. "Bus 17 gone yet?" he asked, voice gravelly. I nodded. "Yeah, just missed it." He grinned, teeth yellowed and uneven, and stuck out a hand. "Name's Victor." I didn't want to touch him. His nails were black with grime, but I shook it anyway, mumbling, "I'm Claire." It wasn't my name. He tilted his head like he knew and asked, "School just let out?" I lied. "Yeah, heading to a friend's." My bus rolled up, and I climbed on, relieved, until Victor followed. He slid into the seat beside me, his coat brushing my arm, reeking of damp earth and something sour. "What year you in?" he pressed. "Junior," I lied again, though I was a freshman. He smirked. "Looked too young for that." My skin crawled. Bus 15 didn't overlap with 17 at all. Why was he here? "Where you going?" I asked, voice tight. "End of the line," he said, staring ahead. I'd ridden this route 100 times and never seen him. He asked if I had a boyfriend. "No," I muttered. "You should," he replied, too quiet, like a threat. The bus rattled past my stop, and I stayed put, hoping he'd get off first. He didn't. At the next stop, a lonely stretch near the mill, I bolted up, and he followed. "Where you headed?" he called as I stepped into the cold. "Friend's place," I lied again. "I'll walk you," he said, closing the distance. "No, I'm fine," I snapped. His smile vanished, and he barked, "Shut up and walk." The street was empty, the bus's taillights fading into the dusk. Panic locked my legs. I couldn't go home. He'd know where I lived. I couldn't run. He was too close. Then I saw it, the mill lot just ahead, its silhouette jagged against the darkening sky. Figures moved there, too many, too still. "Lila," I whispered, praying. Victor grabbed my arm, his grip iron cold, and hissed, "They're waiting." I twisted free and ran toward the lot, heart pounding. The figures turned, pale faces, too many teeth, eyes glinting like wet glass. One stepped forward, wearing Lila's face from the Polaroid, but wrong. Her skin sagged, her mouth stretched too wide. "You came!" it rasped, voice a chorus of whispers. I stumbled back. Victor was behind me now, grinning, his teeth sharper than before. "She's been gone years," he said. "They took her. Now they want you." The letter hadn't been from Lila. It was a lure. The mill's shadows pulsed, alive, reaching. I screamed, but the wind swallowed it, and the last thing I saw was that thing with Lila's face, smiling as the darkness closed in. In 1996, I was 15, trapped in a rotting town of peeling paint and cracked sidewalks, a place too small to hide secrets, but too quiet to scream. School was my only escape, and that day, I'd missed the usual bus, so I walked to the main depot, a concrete slab under a flickering sodium lamp, where the air smelled of diesel and something faintly sour. I stood at gate 4, waiting for bus 12, when a man loomed out of the dusk. He was wiry, maybe 40, with a face like a carved pumpkin left too long in the rain, sallow skin, sunken eyes, and a grin that didn't reach them. "Bus 14 gone yet?" he rasped. I nodded. "Yeah, just missed it." He stuck out a hand, cold and clammy. "I'm Elias." I lied. "I'm Sarah," shaking it despite the shiver crawling up my spine. He boarded bus 12 with me, sitting too close, his knee brushing mine. "School let out?" he asked, voice sticky sweet. "Yeah, going to a friend's," I lied again. He pressed me. School year, boyfriend, plans, like he was peeling me open. I fed him half-truths, heart thudding, because bus 12 didn't overlap with 14. Why was he here? "End of the line," he said when I asked, but I'd never seen him before. His grin widened, teeth jagged, and he muttered, "You're a good one, aren't you?" My mouth went dry. He followed me off at a stop past mine, a desolate corner where the streetlights buzzed and died. "I'll walk you," he said, hand clamping my shoulder. "No, I'm fine," I choked out. His grip tightened and he snapped, "Shut up and move." "I don't have time." "Time for what?" I nodded, legs trembling, and walked blindly, his fingers digging into me like roots. I wasn't religious, but I prayed, silently, desperately, not to faint as my pulse roared in my ears. "Be good, and you won't need to fear me," he whispered. "I'll be good," I parroted, voice breaking, hating myself. Then a miracle. An old woman pruning roses in a yard ahead, her silhouette haloed by porch light. I don't remember deciding to run, just the blur of my feet pounding pavement, screams tearing from my throat. "Help me!" Elias bolted, vanishing into the gloom. The woman called the cops, who took my statement but did nothing. My parents, stretched thin by work, got me a clunky mobile phone that night, a rarity in the 90s. I thought it was over. It wasn't. Weeks later, I boarded bus 12 from school, and there he was, Elias, grinning like a jackal, eyes locked on mine. I stumbled off, ran to the school, and sobbed to Mom over the phone. A teacher escorted me to her car, and the school was alerted. He started lurking, pacing the streets near campus, sometimes daily, sometimes gone for weeks. The police shrugged. He hadn't done anything yet. Mom picked me up late every day, weaving home through back roads to lose any shadow. He never found my house, my real name. I saw him once more, at 21, in a grocery store across town. He didn't recognize me, just shuffled past, muttering to himself. I never learned who he was. Mom swore he'd planned something evil. Dad wouldn't speak of it. But the nightmares told a different story. In them, Elias wasn't human. His grin split wider, revealing rows of needle teeth, and his eyes glowed like embers. He'd whisper, "I don't have time," as the ground beneath me cracked, spilling shadows that coiled like snakes. One night, I woke to scratches on my window, faint, jagged lines spelling "good girl." The phone Mom bought me? It rang once, years later, from an unlisted number. Static crackled, then his voice. "I'm still waiting." I smashed it with a hammer and moved across the country. Across town, my cousin grew up hearing tales of a local creep, Ronnie Voss, a gangly kid who torched sheds and laughed as they burned. They say he vanished one summer, but I wonder if he just changed. Because sometimes, in the dark, I still feel that hand on my shoulder, the hollow grin. In 1996, I was 15, living in Ash Hollow, Ohio, a town of 100,000 souls festering under a gray sky, where the steel mills collapse left behind crumbling homes and a pervasive smell of rust. My name's Ellie Harper, a freshman at Ash Hollow High, a squat brick building on the city's edge, where the buses coughed black exhaust and the kids carried secrets like knives. My parents worked late shifts at the diner and the warehouse, so I navigated the streets alone, a latchkey kid with a knack for lying low. That fall, I'd heard whispers about my half-sister, Mara, who'd fled to Los Angeles years ago after some hushed-up family fight. Mom called her a traitor. Dad wouldn't say her name. I'd found her once on a library computer, a grainy MySpace photo of a pale girl with dark eyes, but she'd gone silent online since. One October afternoon, a note slipped into my locker, scrawled in jagged pencil. "Ellie, it's Mara. I'm back. Meet me tonight at the old quarry off Route 13. Friends will be there. We'll talk." My pulse raced. The quarry was a jagged scar beyond town, abandoned since the 70s, where kids dared each other to jump and sometimes didn't come back. I should have known better, but the lure of her, of answers, pulled me in. After school, I skipped my usual stop and walked to the depot, a windswept lot where the buses groaned like dying beasts. I stood at Gate 5, waiting for Bus 9, when a man stepped from the shadows. He was lean, maybe 40, with a face like wax left too close to a flame, pockmarked, hollow, with eyes that glinted under the flickering lights. "Bus 11 gone yet?" he asked, voice low and dry. "Yeah, just missed it," I said, shifting my backpack. He grinned, teeth crooked and stained, and offered a hand. "Name's Virgil." I lied. "I'm Kate," shaking it quick, his skin cold as river mud. He followed me onto Bus 9, sitting beside me, his coat brushing my arm, reeking of damp earth and something sharp, metal, maybe blood. "School out?" he pressed. "Yeah, visiting a friend," I lied again, stomach twisting. Bus 9 didn't touch 11's route. Why was he here? He kept talking, school year, boyfriend, plans, his voice a slow drip of oil. "End of the line," he said when I asked his destination, but I'd ridden this bus daily and never seen him. "You're a good girl, right?" he murmured, grin widening. I nodded, throat tight, and the bus rattled on. At a stop past mine, near the quarry's edge, I got off, hoping to lose him. He followed, hand clamping my shoulder. "I'll walk you," he said, fingers digging in. "No, I'm fine," I stammered. His grin vanished. "Shut up and move. Time's short." My legs locked, but he pushed me forward, whispering, "Be good, and you've got nothing to fear." I parroted, "I'll be good," voice trembling, and walked, his grip steering me toward the quarry. My heart hammered, breaths shallow. I wasn't religious, but I prayed, not to faint, not to die, as the road stretched empty ahead. Then a flicker of hope. An old man raking leaves outside a sagging house, his dog barking faintly. I bolted, screaming, "Help me!" Virgil cursed and ran, vanishing into the dusk. The man called the cops, who took my statement but shrugged, nothing to arrest him for yet. Mom and Dad got me a brick of a mobile phone that night, a rarity in '96, and I stuck to the school stop after that. I thought it was over. Weeks later, I boarded Bus 9, and there he was, Virgil, sprawled in a seat, grinning like he'd won a prize. I stumbled off, ran to school, and sobbed to Mom. A teacher walked me to her car, and the school flagged him as a threat. He started lurking, pacing near the gates, sometimes daily, sometimes gone for stretches. The police were useless. He hadn't acted yet. Mom drove me home late, weaving through back roads to shake any tail. He never found my house, my real name. I saw him once more, at 21, in a Kroger across town, older, gaunter, but him. He didn't look twice, but I knew that grin. The Mara note gnawed at me. I'd called a cousin in LA who tracked her down. She hadn't been in Ohio in years, hadn't written me. Someone knew I'd bite at that bait, knew I'd head to the quarry. Virgil's "time's short" echoed in my skull. What had he planned? Mom thought he was a predator, methodical and vile. Dad wouldn't talk. But the nightmares told more. Virgil's grin splitting into a maw of fangs, his eyes glowing, the quarry swallowing me whole. One night, I woke to scratches on my window. "Good girl." The phone rang once, years later, static hissing before his voice. "Still waiting?" Then Dad told me about Ronnie Voss, a kid from his street in St. Clair, Ohio, back in the 70s. Scrawny, red-haired, a terror who spat on neighbors and torched sheds for laughs. At 19, Ronnie and two buddies, Cal and Tuck, turned monster. Dad was a college sophomore when it hit the news. They'd been chucking concrete off the I-71 overpass, laughing as cars swerved. One slab smashed through Wendy Klein's windshield. She was 21, driving with her